Looks like the boys got some good traction with the Reddit horror stories video.
They definitely did, and I'm proud of them.
Nobody remembers me at all. It's always Donald, Donald, and Donald.
Girl, I can totally relate to that. Why don't we read a few Reddit horror stories ourselves?
I doubt we will be able to match their energy.
Don't be such a downer, Melania. We may be unpopular when compared to our husbands, but maybe the soothing voices of 3 women reading stories will be better for those who use these videos as background noise.
Exactly. I guess if we're going to do it right like they did, why don't you read off a story first, Melania?
I don't think my reading voice would be soothing, though.
Oh, hush, you'll be fine. Go for it.
Well, I guess I can try. Here's the first story. This story happened a while ago, but it still messes with my mind. Side note, I live in a quiet countryside where is usually nothing happening. I'm an 18 years old girl who can easily walk around my hometown alone without even being scared because it's really safe here, basically no crimes. So as usual, me and my dog went for a walk one evening. It was nice weather outside, so I decided to go for a nearby field. I usually let my dog out of her leash there, so it was fun for both of us. She's a nice dog and always comes when I call for her. We get to the field and everything is going really, really well and nothing seems off, except I have this kind of odd feeling in my gut that I never usually have. The last time I had the same feeling when I was 8 years old and we were driving at night with my family. I had the same feeling then and I told it to my parents, I feel like something is wrong, you should be careful. I said something like that. They slowed down because I was oddly serious at the moment. A minute after I said it, a deer came out of nowhere and we would have crushed if we had gone by the same speed as a minute before. We were all shocked, and my mom thanked me. I still remember it like it was yesterday. However, in the field, 10 years later, I get the same gut feeling. Whatever, I think, and keep going, completely ignoring it. We roll around the fields and a nearby forest until the sunset starts to set. I put my dog back to her leash and decide to leave from one of the tiny paths that go through a small forest. It's the quickest way to my home. It's not a popular way to go, but it's quick. As I'm walking along that path, I suddenly spot a silhouette in the end of the road just before the forest starts. I think nothing of it at that point and just keep walking. But after just a little while, I have a strong gut feeling and stare at the silhouette for a while. It's then that I notice that the silhouette is staring at me without moving. I just think that maybe they were waiting for someone, because at first the silhouette looked like a child's. But as I got closer, I noticed that it wasn't a child, but a grown man who was riding difficulty-looking child's bicycle. It was a blue-green boy's bicycle. His legs were way too long for it, and his whole body looked like he was forcing himself to ride it. It was really unsettling sight. Still, my dumbass didn't want to turn around and have a couple of kilometers waste of time. And even though it was creepy looking, I still thought maybe he's waiting for someone that comes from my way. But every step I take, he follows me with intense expression. I'm only like 20 meters away from him when he starts to do a weird jumps on his bike, smiling the ugliest and the most unsettling smile I've ever seen, just staring at me with wide eyes. He kind of looks like he was expecting something and is so excited about it that he needs to jump. He looks like he's in his 50s or something, very long and thin legs and arms, bald and that creepy, unsettling smile. That's when my alarm rings went on. I glanced behind me and no one was there. It was just me, an 18 years old small girl with her fluffy, definitely not a guard, dog. I turn around 360 degrees and start to jog where I came from, just in case. I glanced at him and sighed in relief when I noticed he wasn't following me or anything. I thought that maybe he wasn't waiting for me after all, and called myself stupid and a scaredy cat. I was so wrong. My adrenaline starts to slow down again as I'm in the middle of the fields, and I still see no sign of him following me. I let my dog out of her leash again, and she starts to run around. I'm nearly at the end of the field. I only have a kilometer or some forest part before I get to my home after the field part. When my dog spots a rabbit or deer or some interesting thing and flies towards it, I panic because she has never done that before and yell for her. I yell plenty of times for her loudly, and finally she comes back. I'm relieved that nothing happened to her, but as I put her back to her leash, I notice something form the corner of my eye. The freaking bald long legs is biking towards me. He's not looking at the ground when he bikes, but me. Freak out wasn't enough to express my feeling in that moment. I have never seen a human who looks so crazy. More than crazy. What surprised me the most was that he was biking through a field. And I can tell you it is not an easy field to even walk sometimes. It has muddy ponds that you need to jump over, but that psycho just biked through them. He was struggling a lot to bike there, but somehow managed to still do that. I didn't watch for another second behind me because I just started running. I ran so freaking full speed, and I have asthma, that I saw black and nearly collapsed. My lungs hurt so bad that I thought I was dying, but the adrenaline kept my blood running and my legs too. Once I glanced behind me and he was there, struggling badly to keep up his full speed on the field grounds with that ugly white smile and the way too little bike. After that, I just ran like crazy until I found a house, hid in their yard without even minding that I was in someone else's yard. It didn't matter to me in that moment at all. I waited a while with my breathing stuck in my throat, but he didn't come. I was planning to yell as loudly as I could if he found me, but he never did. At some point, the adrenaline started leaving my system and I left my hiding spot. I ran again until I reached an area which had multiple people in their yard, so I would have help if I saw him again, but I didn't. I typed 911 into my phone, but couldn't bring myself to call, mostly because I had no proof and I didn't want my parents to find out because they're overprotecting, so I wouldn't probably leave my house anymore. I still live with them, side note. I've been paranoid after this incident. My dog was frightened too. I guess she noticed something was really off too. I swear to God that I will always listen to my gut when it's telling me something from now on. I'm still scared of him. I've expected to randomly spot him in some area and what he could have done to me. I can't forget his awful smile. I feel like he's going to jump on my window one night and do what he wants to me. I feel paranoid and helpless. I'm still thinking about calling the police. This was on r/let's not meet by pumpkin pie 6848.
I'm never venturing into forests ever again, at least not without Commander. He can at least bite people who get too close.
That story gave me the chills. And also, I hope Commander doesn't get put down. He looks so sweet otherwise.
I'm glad you two enjoyed me reading that story. I'm intrigued now to hear what you two picked out for horror stories.
I think I got myself a good creepy one, something from the paranormal. Here goes nothing. I was 19 when I started dating my partner. He had a mostly separate living area at his mom's house that I eventually began to crash at almost every night. I was a tattoo apprentice and didn't make any consistent money yet, and it was nice to have a reliable couch to surf on. Bed, actually, but you get it. His mom wasn't a big fan, so I got good at keeping a pretty low profile while I was there. This usually wasn't an issue, except for the fact that there was only one bathroom in the entire house, and while my partner's space was on the bottom floor, the bathroom was on the third, right in between his mom and little sister's room. Since I worked such late hours, it wasn't unusual for us to not go to bed until 2 or 3 in the morning. So on this night, when I realized I had to pee before we went to sleep, I wasn't too worried because everyone else would be well asleep by then. After going up his painfully creaky stairs, crossing through the kitchen and living room, I started up the stairs to the bathroom. I was tired, so I had my head down, staring at my feet as I went, though until I suddenly felt cold. It wasn't just a gust from an AC vent. It was like I walked into a freezer. I looked around, trying to find where this was coming from, but wasn't until I went up another few stairs that I saw something strange. At the top of the stairs, there was a little girl sitting cross-legged in the dark with her back pressed into the corner. She had long black hair that fell over her face, which immediately made me think that this was my partner's little sister who had the same type of hair. I quietly said her name, not wanting to wake up anyone, but she just sat there. I climbed the rest of the steps to get to her, thinking maybe she was sick or sleepwalking. but she still didn't move or look up when I crouched in front of her. I looked over my shoulder through the open door of their mom's bedroom and saw her sleeping in her bed. Then I looked through the door down the hall, his sister's room, and what I saw on the bed wasn't just a shape under the covers. It was clearly a sister. I could see her hand hanging over the edge of her bed and the half of her face that wasn't buried in her pillow. I turned back to look at the girl sitting on the floor in front of me, and she was still very much there. I popped up like a damn jack-in-the-box and went back down the stairs to grab my partner. But about halfway down, I felt the cold feeling slip off me like a blanket that was being pulled away. I turned and the girl was gone. There was still no way I was going back up those stairs, though. Looking back, I realized now that my decision to walk to the gas station alone and in the middle of the night just to use their bathroom was much more dangerous than whatever was sitting in the hallway. But it definitely didn't feel that way at the time. The next morning, I began to tell my partner about what happened, but as soon as I got to the point of my story where I felt the cold on the stairs, he looks at me with a serious face and says, "Then you saw a little girl at the top of the stairs?" Needless to say, I always made sure to pee before I came over any time after that. This was on ER/Paranormal by Drops of Darkness.
Super fucking creepy, Michelle. That was a good one.
If I had a little ghost girl that roamed my house looking like Sadako from The Ring, I'm moving out. She can fucking have the house.
And now I have the penultimate story. I don't think this will top the boys and their stories they chose, but it doesn't hurt to try and read with the girlfriends, right? Anyway, let's get started. You know, you sometimes see a shape that seems like it's right on the edge of your vision. Then it disappears as soon as you try to look at it. That thing you see in your peripheral vision. Sometimes it's really there. It sounds stupid, and until recently, I'd have been right there with you. It only started recently for me. I'm a student at Oxford University. I'd been working towards this my entire life. Ever since I was young, I wanted to be a paleontologist. I was obsessed with dinosaurs and loved the films like Jurassic Park. So when I was able to get into Oxford to study it, it was like a dream come true for me. My accommodation is located a short distance away from the main campus through a small park. It's a small apartment where I stay by myself at the moment. I'm not big on the whole party scene and hardly go to any unless my friends force me out. So living on my own is a godsend. I don't mind the walk through the park, to be honest. It's nice and refreshing wandering along that path first thing in the morning when everything is still, flanked by small trees on either side and the sounds of the birds. It helps me to get into the right mindset for studying, letting in the calmness of nature. About a month ago, I was walking back alone through the park. I'd been studying in the library with a few of my friends for a big assignment due in next week, and I'd lost track of the time. The sun had begun to sink behind the trees, casting a large shadow over the normally tranquil park. But I knew the place well enough that I wasn't worried. I put in my wireless earbuds and put on a nice, relaxing playlist before setting off through the dim park. The twilight gave the park a different feeling to it, and I reveled in the surroundings, the colors and the stillness. The grass had taken on a gray hue, which contrasted brilliantly with the white of the path and the orange and purples in the sky. As I walked, enamored as I was with the vibrant colors I was seeing, I couldn't help but feel something was off. I couldn't quite place it. It was silly, really, but it almost felt like a feeling of being watched. Like eyes just beyond the tree line were fixed on me, following my every move. It brought me back to my senses as I shuddered. Then I noticed something just out of the corner of my eye. A black shape that seemed to be just on the edge of the tree line. It was perfectly still, but it seemed out of place in the twilight. It seemed like a well of darkness in the otherwise dim twilight. It was as though it was a complete absence of light, The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Quickly, my eyes darted over towards it. I wondered if this was the source of the feeling of being watched I'd experienced earlier. Maybe there was someone in the tree line trying to scare passersby as a joke. As soon as my eyes rested on the location where I had seen the shape, they were met with nothing, just the quickly darkening tree line as the sun dipped further and further below the horizon. It all looked the same, just trees and bushes. I shook my head, laughing to myself about how jumpy I'd been before continuing on my way. That feeling of being watched still followed me all the way back home. I didn't see any more dark shapes, and there was nothing out of the ordinary as far as I could tell, but I couldn't seem to shake that unnerving feeling. As soon as I got home, I put on the TV in an attempt to relax and shake the awful feelings I'd felt on my walk back. Within a few minutes, however, my head began pounding so hard it took my breath away. I felt so much pressure like my head was about to explode. Then there was a wave of nausea, and I had to run to the bathroom, narrowly avoiding vomiting all over my carpet. I didn't normally suffer with migraines, but this one seemed to come from out of nowhere. I forewent any thought of food at that point, the nausea and pain in my head thoroughly strangling my appetite. Opting to try to get to sleep and hoping that it would clear in the morning, I shakily made my way into my bedroom and turned out the lights. After hours, I awoke, my head clear and the nausea gone. I breathed a sigh of relief. Making my way downstairs to get breakfast, I contemplated the sudden migraine I'd experienced yesterday. It must have been sleep-related or possibly due to my diet. Being a student, I didn't exactly have the budget to be eating the best foods. And I had been pulling a few late-nighters due to the assignment coming up. They're the only things I could think of that might cause something like that. Still, it worried me. What if it happens again? It wasn't something I'd like to go through on a regular basis. I made myself some toast and decided to phone the doctors just to check that it wasn't something I should be worried about. I hated the doctors, but better safe than sorry, I thought to myself. I managed to get an appointment that same morning. In the doctor's office, I explained what had happened while he busied himself with all the usual checks. I even mentioned the strange black shape I'd seen in the corner of my vision, just in case there was some link. He didn't look too concerned as all of his checks had come up as normal. When I'd mentioned the shape in the corner of my eye, he explained that it was most likely a visual migraine, a condition that affects one eye and results in a temporary blind spot. It can last as little as a minute or as long as an hour and can sometimes precede a standard migraine. It can be caused by lack of sleep or poor diet, among other things, he went on to explain. Although he wasn't worried, he still sent me to book an eye test at my local optician's. Just to be sure, he said. I went straight from the doctor's to the optician's, wanting to get the tests out of the way so I could get on with my day. While I was relieved that there didn't seem to be anything wrong with me, this was becoming time-consuming. The opticians went through the usual, is it better with A or B, and looked at the back of my eyes with the torch. The bright light burned my eyes, and I could see the veins in the back of my retina superimposed in my vision. I shuddered a little at the snake-like paths that they weaved over one another. Stuff like that always creeped me out. After what felt like too long, the optician turned off the torch and proceeded to tell me there was nothing wrong with my vision. They agreed with the doctor that I was most likely just experiencing a visual migraine due to lack of sleep. Either way, I wasn't going blind, which was one of my main worries when I woke up this morning. They told me to rest up and the migraine should go away within a few weeks. Thanking the optician as I left, I was elated that all I had a clean bill of health. I carried on with my day and let the odd events of the previous evening drift from my mind. About a week passed before something like that happened again. I was standing in the courtyard in the middle of the university campus, chatting with a group of my friends. I was midway through hearing a story about the previous evening's drunken antics when I started feeling like I was being watched again. I knew there were a lot of people around us, but this felt different, like someone was staring directly at me, fixed on me. Just as I became aware of the feeling, I noticed a black shape in the corner of my vision, out of my right eye. It was under a large stone archway in the entrance to the science block. The shape seemed larger than before, covering more space in my peripheral vision, blocking out a larger portion of my sight. It was still, the same as before, absorbing the light around it. I could make out the shapes of people walking towards it, then vanishing into blackness as they appeared to pass right through it. Something about it made my hair stand on end again. It seemed almost closer than before somehow. I was snapped back into the conversation as my friend Toby slapped me on the shoulder asking, "Yo, you still here, man?" I shook off what I'd just seen, trying to act cool, like that black shape hadn't unnerved me. "Yeah, man, I'm fine." Tentatively, I looked back over to the archway where I'd seen the shape. There was nothing there, just the throng of people entering and exiting the building. There was no sign that there had been anything there at all. Less than 10 minutes later, my head felt like it was spilling open again, and I nearly vomited in one of my classes. I had to excuse myself and go to the bathroom to find a place to throw up. This felt worse than the first time. It lasted longer too, only begging to ebb away a couple of hours later. That feeling of being watched was still there too. Not as strong as when I saw the shape, but it was unmistakably there. It followed me as I made my way around the campus, only clearing when the migraine subsided. This happened to me a couple more times before I started to get really concerned. One time I was visiting my parents. We had just sat down for dinner with the rest of my family, and I noticed a darkness out of the corner of my eye. It was standing on the other side of the window across the room, still as a post, making it look like it was nighttime outside with the way it absorbed all light. When I turned to look, there was nothing, the same as the last couple of times. I began dreading what came next. Within minutes, a migraine took hold of me, a strong feeling of pressure in my skull, my eyes feeling like they wanted to pop from their sockets. Then came the nausea, and I had to run up the stairs as fast as I could to the bathroom, leaving the rest of my family sitting around the dinner table. All the while, it felt like there were eyes boring into the back of my skull, even when I lay down in my parents' guest room to try and sleep it off. It seemed like the migraines were getting worse and worse. I even went back to the doctors, who ran their checks again, revealing nothing. They prescribed me some medication for the pain and nausea, recommending that I sleep more and consider what I was eating, but that was about it. The meds did nothing to stop it. They didn't even help when I was in the throes of one. I'd noticed a pattern whenever these migraines would come on. It would always be when I was distracted, in the middle of studying or talking to my friends, when my guard was down. I never noticed anything when I was actively aware of my surroundings. They seemed to be worse at nighttime, though. That's when the shape always seemed closer. I was studying one night in my room alone. It was dark other than for the light of my desk lamp. The sun had long since set, but I was too engrossed in my work to get up and turn the main light on. I like to work like this by the light of my small desk lamp. It helped me block out distractions and concentrate on what was in front of me. After some time, I saw a shadow in my peripheral vision, resigning myself to the fact that I was about to be in for another night of pain and nausea. I began to close my notebook. Only this time, the shadow did something that made my stomach sink. It moved, slowly at first. I hadn't noticed it before, but it looked like a section of it was stretching out, slowly getting closer and closer towards me. I shot a glance in its direction. This time it didn't disappear as normal, and I was able to make out more of what it was. It was a large, dark shape, almost resembling a man. It seemed almost fuzzy around the edges, as though the light was warping around it, becoming one with the darkness in the room. Tendrils of blackness were spreading throughout the corners of the room, obscuring the figure even further. I could make out its thin, spindly limbs, knotted with sinuous muscles. The joints were at odd angles, giving the creature the appearance of something akin to a four-legged spider. Terrified, my eyes made their way up to its head. Atop a long snake-like neck sat a grotesque reptilian face. Its eyes seemed to bore into mine with an intense hunger, glowing with a strange light that contrasted with the darkness that made up its body. Its mouth was spread wide in a toothless grin, the same glowing light emanating from deeper within its throat. Its hand was reaching for me, stretched out in a longing gesture, tipped with dagger-like claws. I was terrified. What was I seeing? Visual migraines were not supposed to look like this, at least I didn't think so. It seemed to linger there, imprinted on my vision before vanishing as it had each time before, leaving nothing but the dark, empty space where it once stood. The migraine came on immediately this time and knocked all sense from me. I didn't have time to process what I'd seen. The pain in my head was too much. I turned the desk lamp off and staggered to my bed in the hopes that it would go away with sleep. All the while that I was trying to sleep, tossing and turning, I could feel those same glowing eyes staring at me from somewhere. Try as I might, I couldn't find the thing responsible. My room was silent and still. After several hours of tossing and turning, I finally managed to drift off, only to be awoken a few hours later by my alarm. I forced myself out of bed, my head still throbbing slightly from the migraine last night. This was getting too much now. I tried to call the doctors to get another appointment and update them with the latest development. But by the time I'd gotten through, there was nothing available. "You'll have to try again tomorrow," they told me. Thanks for nothing. I went to my lectures, barely able to function. The pain in my head was slowly fading, but I was just so tired. All of my friends said I looked like hell. I felt like it too. All the while I was keeping an eye in the corners of my vision, my eyes darting side to side for any sign of another migraine coming on. I couldn't take another one, not so soon after the last. The rest of the day went on without incident, other than me nearly falling asleep in a particularly warm lecture hall while a monotone professor droned on about ancient Pangaea, reading slides from the whiteboard. As I was about to make my way home, my friends cornered me, wanting to go to a local bar after to get some beers. I just couldn't. I wasn't the most sociable person anyway, but today I was far too tired. I excused myself, enduring their pleas for me to come with them, and made my way home through the park. Even though it was still light, I couldn't help but think about the dim twilight of that night when this had all started. This was where I first saw that odd shape in my vision hiding in the trees. I'd had my first migraine when I got home. My thoughts drifted to the previous night, what I'd seen when I looked at that dark spot in my vision, that horrific reptilian-looking thing reaching out. I wonder if it's normal to hallucinate shapes in the darkness when you have a migraine. All of the way back, I was scanning the trees, conscious of the edges of my vision, watching for any dark spots that might appear again. My eyes darted frantically, and I picked up my pace, not wanting to linger. Much to my relief, there was nothing. The park was empty, and I made it home without so much as a single blur in my vision. As soon as I got in, I went upstairs and collapsed on my bed, foregoing my evening meal for the sake of a decent sleep. I doubted I had the energy in me to cook anyway. As soon as I landed on the soft covers of the bed, I was out cold. I didn't even bother changing or getting under the quilt. It wasn't until several hours later that I awoke. It was still dark in my room, the birds not yet singing to signal that the sun was rising. I lay there staring into the blackness of my room, enjoying the silence, when my stomach began to roar loudly, protesting the fact that I'd not eaten for several hours. Checking my watch, I noted that it was only a few hours before I would normally be getting up to go to university anyway. I may as well get up and start my day now, I thought. I rolled out of bed and made my way down the stairs to the kitchen. I was starving, making my way over to the fridge, hoping that I had some leftovers in there that I could have as a quick breakfast. I noticed it. There, just in the corner of my left eye, was a large black darkness. It seemed to be covering the area where the kitchen door would be. No, not again, I thought to myself. I really couldn't deal with another migraine. As if drawn towards it by some mysterious pull, my gaze wandered towards the shape. It didn't move again, just like last time, and I could make out even more of it now. It was still that gaunt, sinewy body with a snake-like neck and spider-like limbs. Only this time I could see the smoke-like darkness billowing from it, as though its very presence was creating the absence of light in the room, absorbing it and leaving nothing but darkness in its wake. It was closer this time, too, looming only a few feet away. It was terrifying, the way its glowing eyes followed me as I slowly closed the fridge door and backed away. The way its long, clawed hand began raising up and extending towards me, each finger clicking and jerking into an outstretched, open hand. The way its limbs seemed to jerk and contract as it took shaky, uncoordinated steps towards me. It's not real, I kept telling myself. It's just a hallucination before a migraine. Just ignore it. It's probably just your subconscious. But it didn't stop me from staring at the thing, the feeling of abject terror in my stomach. I continued backing away until my back hit the wall of the kitchen. I was stuck. There was no way I could get out of the room without walking through that thing. As much as I knew it wasn't real, there was something that told me that wasn't an option I wanted to take. As if sensing that I was trapped, a thin grin seemed to spread across the thing's toothless face, revealing that faint glow from within its mouth. It took another jerky step towards me, closing the distance between us. I closed my eyes, praying for this to be over and for the inevitable headache to come so that I could just deal with it and get on with my life. What felt like an eternity passed. I was too afraid to open my eyes just in case it had not passed yet. Then I felt something that made the blood drain from my face. A large, thin hand wrapped itself over my shoulder. I could feel the gnarled knuckles along the fingers. I could feel the dagger-like claws pressing against my back in a strong grip. I opened my eyes and screamed. The thing was inches from my face, a gleeful grin plastered across it, like a child enjoying playing with a new toy. It was real. It was real. It wasn't just a visual migraine. What the hell was this thing? Then it slowly began to open its toothless jaws, the light within growing brighter by the second. This is it, I thought. Whatever this is, it's going to eat me. It kept on opening them, stretching them further and further apart. It looked so unnatural. The way that its jaws seemed to disengage, getting wider and wider. The light from its throat grew brighter and brighter until it was blinding. I couldn't see anything at all. Not the creature in front of me, not my hand in front of my face, nothing. I woke up on the kitchen floor, the blinding sunlight coming in through the windows, bathing the whole room in its radiance. I tried to sit up. My head was pounding. The migraine was there, but it felt even worse than before, like I'd been hit with a shovel. I raised my hand to the back of my head, and when I took it away, my fingers were coated in thick crimson red. I must have hit my head pretty hard when I fell to the floor. Then I remembered the creature. I backed up against the wall in panic, in case it was still here somewhere, hiding. My eyes darted wildly around the kitchen, looking for any sign of it. As my shoulder touched the wall behind me, I felt a searing pain in my shoulder. My shirt had been torn, slashed in the places where those claw-like fingers had held me, leaving small puncture wounds in my skin underneath. There was nothing. The kitchen was empty, as was the rest of the house. Panic and fear pulsed through me as I ran back into my bedroom. Now I'm typing this to you all. I don't know what to do. That thing is real. I don't know what it wants, but it seems to be getting closer each time I see it. It's real and I don't know how to stop it. This was on r/no sleep by Dante's Ghost 92. Hopefully he gets the help he needs.
Okay, your story wins, Jill. Now, even I won't trust my peripherals anymore.
We're already longer than what the boys did, so hopefully this was all worth it. They're working on more spooky content as we speak.